Welcome back to Close Up on San Diego Business, where we get up close and personal with San Diego businesses and the key people that are working hard to make a difference in our community. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here on KFSD AM 1450 and financialnewsandtalk.com.
Okay, we're back, and we have our next guest, a gentleman I've known for a good number of years. Welcome, Dan Negroni.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Launchbox. Tell us about Launchbox. What is Launchbox?
Sure. As I said earlier, Launchbox is a business that bridges the gap between millennials, which, as Al said, are Utes, or kids between the ages, I call them kids because I'm an old guy, but kids between the ages of 20 and 34 years old with the other generations, Gen X and the baby boomers, or us old guys. Mm-hmm. And we bridge the gap to let them be able to communicate well so we can affect business and personal change.
Well, it's interesting because you're a non-practicing attorney, correct?
Well, I actually practice
okay.
in my own business and have for probably 24 years.
Uh-huh. What type of law?
Corporate mergers, acquisitions, real estate, mostly business law.
So business law and bringing the millennials in, you're building your business up for the long term, I take it.
Yeah, well, for sure. I've always been an entrepreneur. Actually, my first business was hot dog carts in New York City on the corner of Fordham Road in the Bronx. So I've always been an entrepreneur.
Well, you're lucky you're in New York, because in Philadelphia, all the carts on the street are held by all the Greeks, okay?
We don't discriminate.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, now I'm married to a Greek.
Okay. So you know what? I think we ought to take one quick step back. Why don't you tell our listeners, for those who are unfamiliar, what is a millennial that you're servicing?
Yeah, so a millennial is basically somebody who's been born, and the statistics change a little bit, but between 1980 and the year 2000. And they've grown up in that time period, and so they have just a very different perspective on life. They call them millennials. They call them Gen Y, which is the generation after Gen X. And they're just probably one of the most amazing groups you could ever meet, but sometimes we don't think so much.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we both have kids pretty close to the same age. And, I'm just amazed at, what these kids go through and, how smart they are. And I look back at when I was that age, and I was never there. So, you have a challenge in front of you working with these kids that are smarter than we were growing up.
For sure, they're smarter, but it's really interesting. There's kind of a dearth in teaching real-world skills. They've grown up as the trophy generation, right? Uh-huh. Everyone was on a soccer team, and they kind of got a trophy for doing everything. Everyone's great. Well, again, not so much. Where I'm from in the Bronx, we tell it the way it is. And sometimes you have to tell it, you know what, that wasn't so great. Could you do better? How do you do better? Who do you control? What's the secret to getting this done? And we've spent a lot less time doing that and a lot more time making sure they have every lesson and are on every team and are, have book smarts, but not necessarily the people skills, right?
Right.
And I'll ask you guys a question. What do you think is the most important skill in life to be successful?
What's the most?
Work ethic.
Work ethic?
I think work ethic. I think communication.
So, I get every answer from my 13-year-old told me forgiveness, and I asked him what he did. But I've gotten every answer you can get from communication.
Keep him away from Shane, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep him across the street. But here's the deal. I've gotten every answer, but the real answer is it's a human condition, and communication is a part of it. The most important skill you can have is to build a relationship, right?
Right.
And what's the first relationship you build? It's with yourself.
Right.
And then it's with others, because people, as we know, and as Al talks about even in marketing, people control money, love, power, information. And so in order to get any of those things, you better be proficient in those skills. Mm-hmm. And so we're not teaching our kids how to build relationships. They're sitting in front of the computer, they're playing games, they're doing things that are not.
So how do you do it? Is this a coaching process?
Well, we have a bunch of we work with corporations, and we have a coaching and consulting business. We have seminars, which we do, a day-and-a-half seminar where we do in a very unique way. We call it our proprietary process, where we actually include 3 different circles, which is understanding the self and the mind, understanding the body, because there's some physicality. You have to be in shape, understand, feel good about yourself to represent that, as Jody's going to speak about next. And your career, which is really important. And I'm a firm believer, being a cancer survivor, and you know me to be an athlete and at the gym all the time, and that if you don't have a little bit of all those things together, you're kind of not whole, and you can't bring enough of yourself to give to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And part of relationship building is about giving to the world and giving back, right? It's more about what you give than what you get. And so we have this proprietary formula that goes through actually a physicality, a nutrition, all these things, and kind of some self-exploration in a very real, direct, no BS talk.
Yeah. So you deal with nutrition as well?
We deal with nutrition too.
Because it's about body, mind, and spirit, right?
It's body, mind, and spirit. You got it.
Yeah. So will people get muscles like yours? I just snapped a picture of you. I'm going to put on Facebook. Will they be in shape like you if they take your program?
You know, everyone does their thing differently. And, you know, genetics are part of my muscles. And I'm not too egocentric to realize that's what happened. But the thing is it's a balance, and life's about a balance. And really the principles that we talk about is you only control yourself. And what you get out of life is what you put into life. And I don't think we have that dialogue enough. And I don't think we're talking about the millennial generation, which is great. I don't think we're good enough teachers to that generation. And that's an economic challenge. Mm-hmm. It costs money to train people. Yeah. It costs time. But the rewards, you know, are plentiful.
Yeah, I worked in corporate America for a while at at the time one of the top sales organizations in the world, and they spent more money in training each of their sales reps than I think most other companies. And what they spent a lot of time on training us to do was to teach ourselves and the value of self-assessment and that tough talk to do it to ourselves.
Sure.
And we came out of every sales call sitting down, having a tough conversation with ourselves. What did we do well? What did we need to do better?
Absolutely.
How is that a part of your program, or is it?
It is actually the basis for the program. So thank you for leading me into that. You know, the number one challenge at work, and Jody will tell you, Al will tell you, anyone who has employees will tell you, is engagement and engaging that person. And that's why I said to you that the first relationship starts with yourself and owning it. And being a lawyer has actually helped me in the proprietary process that we have, because it's about asking questions. And the first set of questions you need to ask to give value is to yourself. And then, just like what you're doing here with this show, the ability to ask deep and thoughtful questions to people is how you can give back every day, all day. And that's part of the fundamental process that we teach to get them to be engaged and have relationships.
That's great. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KFSD AM 1450 and financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts, Andrea Kay, Al Arias, and our guest, Dan Negroni from Launchbox. So Dan, tell me, you know, I have to assume that millennials are really becoming the dominant community in our country.
Well, they're the largest generation. There's 79 million of them out there.
Wow.
So they make up over 20% of our population. They're 36% of the workforce today, 36 to 40%. And in the next 10 years, they're going to be 75% of our workforce. And imagine what percent of our customers they're going to be. Mm-hmm. So we really need to figure this out if we want to have successful businesses.
True.
And then in turn, successful lives and successful kids and so on and so forth.
Well, how do you impart the training? What are the different methods?
With a stick.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Hey, that worked for my daddy and my mama back in the day. But I mean, is it in person? Is it in camps? Is it
we do kind
video?
of a boot camp. We have this really cool, hip, millennial type warehouse space, which has a gym attached to it, which is kind of a lofty warehouse. And we do seminars. We have businesses that send their teams of millennials to us. We actually work in law firms, teaching their summer associates, and for some of the big accounting firms as well, teaching their summer associates these real world skills. So by the time they get those big jobs with those huge salaries, they actually understand a little bit about this stuff. We work for large companies. We've been in discussion with Coca-Cola. So there's a huge gap that we need to bridge so these millennials can talk to their managers and then talk to the customers accordingly.
Well, tell me something. You know, if we're employers like you and I, we're not in the millennial set, but we're hiring the millennial set. Okay, what can an employer expect? What's the benefit for the employer to hand over his millennial employees to you?
I think it's what I said, is engaged employees, engaged in themselves, understanding themselves. Look, all millennials want is that people care about them.
Right.
It's a human condition. That's all we all want, is people to care about us. And if we care about these people in our businesses and we show them that we care, they will outperform, 10 to 1 each time. And so I think they can look for the millennials because they are smarter than us, no matter what we say. The myth is they're entitled and they're all these things. But we can look for them to push us to innovation, right? It's just the way of the world. And soon, if you look at statistics too, there'll be a huge percentage of people working for themselves. And we need to get this right.
Interesting. I resonated with something you said earlier, because in the financial world, I deal with employers and employees. We put in the 401k plans, and I always design the 401k plans. Make sure they do something for themselves before you do something for them, because they need to learn to act for themselves. And it's not like the industrial age where the companies put out all the retirement benefits.
They have to commit and invest in themselves. And this is a joint way to do that.
Yeah. So, we're starting to run short on time. So, Dan, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, they can go to our website at www.launchbox.tv, and or they could call. They'll get our number from the website and they can call. But we're happy to talk to and engage and speak with anyone that's interested in getting themselves better and pushing themselves to the next level, launching, so to speak.
Great. That's great. Yeah.
Not something you think that most attorneys would be involved in.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Yeah, I'm more of a sales guy. The hot dog thing runs deep.
Okay. Well, I know where to come in the neighborhood for the next barbecue.
There you go. Friday night.
So great. Well, Dan, I appreciate you being with us. So remind our listeners to go to www.launchbox, LAUNCHBOX.TV. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And you are listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KFSD AM 1450, where we get up close and personal with homegrown San Diego businesses and people that are working to make a difference in our community. This is financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler. We'll be right back after the break with more homegrown business Close Up and Jody Rogers from